these ideologies of left and right are not, neither of them were really consistently protective of the idea of human rights and freedom. And freedom is the word around which I've rallied my entire life. That's where my intellectual
Me too.
imagination was kicked off. When I was in high school, I fell in love with this whole idea of freedom. So the true partisans of freedom, we can borrow from the left and borrow from the right, but what we're trying to do is cobble together a different outlook. And one version of that is what Milei's pushing forward as anarcho-capitalism. Now, you made a point earlier, and I think it's worth reinforcing. This is not a plan. This is not a plan for society. It's not a central plan. It's not. It's not like here's my legislation, anarcho-capitalist legislation to recreate society in my ideological form. That's not it at all. That is to let society alone, defend human rights, defend private property as understood widely within the community of owners, and then let society evolve on its own. So it's the opposite of a central plan. The other thing is that anarchists were typically utopians. They imagined that they would recreate human nature in some way. Marx believed this. Every socialist believes this. That once we achieve their great revolution, we'll all change as people in some way, become, I don't know, compassionate or sharing or
But the idea, and I think it's true, and it's not well understood, is that this is absolutely not about anarchy, and that people, if left alone, they don't end up in a state of nature where everybody's fighting for everything. They end up cooperating. They end up dealing with each other. They respect each other's rights, and they create contracts that they enforce. They've got law, the common law that protects rights and contracts, and it's an orderly society that promotes freedom and well-being, and
yeah.
it's just the opposite of anarchy.
Yeah, Murray often endorsed Proudhon's slogan that order is not the mother, but the daughter of liberty. He often said this, that first you need liberty, and then the result is an orderly society. And the state itself is the source of disorder. And that's empirically true. Anywhere you want to look in the world today, whether it's the United States or Argentina or anywhere, China for that matter, the state has always believed that it's a source of order, but actually, society contains within itself the capacity to create its own orderly society.
Let me try an example near and dear to us. We were both fierce opponents of the lockdowns and everything that happened with
Yeah.
COVID. And you look at what the state did, the federal, state, local governments, and locking people down. They shut down this business, declared it was non-essential, and so on and so forth. They went in and decided in their infinite wisdom to you can do this, you can't do that, rule from on high. And what they did is they broke the economy. And we're still paying the price because the economy is a whole set of micro relationships among people and businesses and each other, supply chain, things like that. All these edicts from the state wrecked an economy which was actually doing just fine, thank you. And now we're still trying to heal that.
They said in those days that they didn't care what happens to the economy because the economy is just the stock market. That's what Fauci said. I'll leave the stock market to others. I mean, the economy is what we do every day.
Real quick, give us the distinction between the financial economy and the real economy.
The real economy is what we buy and sell and consume, and what we do, and it's what we work, and it's our charitable giving, and it's the paying the bills of the church you're going to this weekend. It's everything that we do in the material world. That is what we call the economy,
and that's what we're talking about. It's not the stock market.
No, and so they said, oh, who cares what happens to the stock market? We've got a disease on the loose. Well, they ruined everything. They ruined education. They ruined church going. They ruined our ability to go see our families.
Yeah.
If they're sick, to gather for weddings and funerals. That's the economy. The economy is how we live. Mises always had this great slogan. He said, "Economics is the pith of life." I always like that because it's the pith meaning
the pith.
It's a metaphor from the tree. The pith is the thing inside the tree, the thickness that makes the tree grow. And he said it was the pith of life itself, and therefore it's the proper study of every human being. So yeah, they were very dismissive towards the economy. And that was very dangerous because it has shattered culture. It's shattered our psychology. Our health has
Yeah.
never been worse. We've
Yeah.
never been more depressed. Mental illness, substance abuse, learning loss, isolation from our neighbors, meanness in general. It's all taken a toll since lockdowns.
Well, that's a topic of conversation all the time now with a lot of my friends. We get together and we say people seem to be changed,
I
and it's uh, it's hard to describe, but it's real.
I agree with you. And so here's a great example. The state attempted to impose an order on us, and look what they did. They created mass disorder and disorientation and confusion. We're far from having recovered from that.
Well, Murray Rothbard took it all the way. He didn't think we needed a state at all. In other
Right.
words, if we're going to get together to, if we need roads or bridges or things like that, instead of the state doing it, we'll develop a voluntary group that gets together and we'll pitch in and we'll make that happen. That's a tall order.
It is a tall order, but Murray always proposed this as an intellectual challenge. He would always ask you, can you think of anything that society needs, necessarily, absolutely needs to have done, that the state can do better than people can on their own, working through voluntary interactions and exchanges? I mean, that's the way Murray put the challenge to me. And I thought about it for many months, did a lot of reading. I couldn't come up with anything. And so I came up to him because I didn't, here's the thing. I didn't want to be an anarchist, you know? I mean, do I look like an anarchist? I mean, I didn't want to be an anarchist.
Well,
So,
you don't look the part, but I
but I said to him,
beneath that rather dapper exterior lies a real revolutionary. I know that.
so I didn't want to be an anarchist, at all, but he was making me very uncomfortable. And I thought about it a long time. And I finally, the next time I saw him, I said, Murray, I've been thinking about this a lot. So if I conclude that there's something that definitely needs to be done in society, uh, that there's nothing that we definitely need, that the state is, by definition and by experience, better at doing than society itself. If I could make that conclusion, does that make me an anarchist? And he said, well, certainly it makes you an anarchist. That's what you are. I took a big, deep breath and I said, well, I guess I'm an anarchist. And he was a darling man. He was quite short and very effusive and exuberant. And he just jumped up in the air like a little elf, leaped yeah, 3 feet forward and grabbed my hand and said, well, I'm so glad, Jeffrey, you're an anarchist. You're an anarchist now. And I was like, oh, okay. So every time I have these discussions with people, and that same more or less conversation is replicated, I always try to reproduce his mannerisms.
But we're digging into this a bit. Another thing you point out is that there are lots of people who might call themselves this, but there are lots of different versions of
Yeah,
it. I mean,
sure.
I was all caught up in Ayn Rand and Atlas
Sure.
Shrugged and Fountainhead, but Ayn Rand believed in the state,
She did.
and so there's a distinction between what we're talking about and what she thought.
There is. So he was a real fan of Ayn Rand, and I really have to say this name on this podcast because it doesn't get any attention. The name of the man who actually converted Murray to the anarchist side, his name is Frank Chodorov. So it's Chod, Chod, Orov. And he was the son of some Jewish immigrants, I think from Russia in the 1890s, but was a very prominent writer. He used to write a little bit for National Review, but wrote for the New Individualist,